Competitions in the Hunter Classic not only give you an opportunity to earn the more valuable currency of EM, but they also give you a chance to compete against friends and other The Hunter Classic members for trophies for your trophy gallery. Now, in today's video, I wanted to talk about competitions from a beginner's perspective for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think they're a good thing to get into, but also in the next iteration of the beginner guide, I intend to talk about some of the things you can purchase from the store, and I wanted to look at another way to potentially earn currency instead of purchasing it. So we find ourselves on the competition screen here in the launcher, and we'll spend quite a bit of time here today, but I'm hoping to kind of explain things over some hunting footage so that we're not staring at this screen the entire time. But there are 5 main topics I want to cover in relation to competitions today, and then we're going to go for a bit of a competition hunt and see if we can end up placing in the top 3. Our 5 topics are the difference between EM and GM, those two currencies. I think that's important to know the distinction. And then competition rewards, competition selection, how to enter and read the rules and requirements, and then a breakdown of starter, intermediate, elite versus the open entry comps. And that will become a little bit more clear when we get into it. So firstly, the difference between the two The Hunter Classic currencies, EM and GM. The easiest way to describe it is that GM are earned. So if we go to our history here, we can see all of the GM that we've earned. Basically, these even larger amounts, 100 GM, 200 GM, those are from missions. These smaller amounts, 54, 65, 80, these are when we're harvesting animals. You can see the animal ID and the CSS reward here. The GM reward, it's from a mission, it just doesn't tell us that. EM can be acquired in 2 different ways. You can purchase them. You can see here you have the EM purchase history. If you went to get EM, you have this opportunity to purchase in 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, or 5,000 amounts. And obviously you can see the amount that is required to purchase those. The other way to earn EM is through competitions, and that's why we're here talking about this today. And it can really help you out to get your hands on some EM. I talked about in the beginner guide earning GM through missions and animal harvest, and you can purchase any item in the store for a GM amount. However, the EM currency is 17 times more valuable. I don't know why they chose that particular number, but that is the case. We see these 4 rifles here all are worth 1,000 EM or can be purchased for 17,000 GM. But the nice thing is, even as you're doing competitions and even if you're not winning those comps, you're still harvesting animals, potentially completing missions, and earning GM in the process, so just enrolling in competitions and hunting for them can be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. If you want to get EM, that more valuable currency in the Hunter Classic, competitions are the one way to do it without spending real money, and they can be a great way to actually build up EM if you find the right comps. So let's look at the mule deer competitions today. If we click on the mule deer typical tab, and by the way, there will be no mule deer non-typical competitions, we see 3 comps: biggest mule for starter, intermediate, and elite. The distinction in those tiers is the amount of mule deer harvest you have. So for instance, you can see the only one we can activate is the starter tier. That's because we have less than 50 mule deer harvest. The requirement for starter is less than 50, intermediate is 51 to 500, elite is over 500. That starter comp is going to be nice for a chance to win. However, this is not a way to earn EM. You see, the prizes are only trophies. All of the starter tier competitions for all species only reward trophies. There is no EM reward for those starter tier comps. Compare that to the intermediate prizes. You see, first place gives 75 EM and a trophy, second place is 50 EM and a trophy, and so on. Those competitions will reward EM, but you obviously have to have more than 50 harvests for that species. That's where we get into the open entry comps. Now let's take a look at the Axis Deer competition running today, and when we go to the Axis Deer tab, you see in parentheses the number 1. I know without even going and looking at the comp, this will be what I call an open entry comp, meaning literally anybody in the Hunter Classic can enter regardless of how many Axis Deer harvests they have. So we see there's no starter, intermediate, or elite, there's just one competition with the requirements of your lowest scoring male Axis Deer weighing more than 80 kilo is your competition entry. So whether you have 1 Axis Deer harvest or 1,000, you can enter this comp and compete for the prizes. And we see the prizes listed, 100 EM and a trophy for first place, and so on for second and third place. Now, when entering a competition, it is really important to look at the rules and conditions, because sometimes just the description of the competition isn't enough. In this case, it generally is. There's not really anything unexpected here. So you see the weapons, you can use any that are permitted. The scoring, obviously we're looking for the lowest scoring axis deer with the special requirement of weighing more than 80 kilo. Game mode is single player only, so you don't want to do this in a multiplayer game or none of your deer will count for the comp, and you can see when it starts and ends and all that good stuff. There are attempts as well. 5 attempts means you can launch 5 hunts on a map with axis deer once you've joined the comp. If you want to participate in this competition, you click the join button. Now when we go to the competitions tab, this will be up here under the enrolled competitions part. You see the attempts, your position, and the status, meaning whether it's still ongoing or has ended. So with a pretty brief and basic synopsis of how competitions work and what kind of prizes they can provide, I want to talk about competition selection and choosing the ones that are going to give you the best chance of placing top 3 and earning some EM. So I'm going to deactivate this axis deer one for now, and we're just going to click on a couple of these that I haven't even seen and just see what they are and whether or not I'd recommend joining them. So let's look at, for instance, the Bobcat comp. We see there's only a 1 there, so it's going to be an open entry comp. This particular one requires the highest scoring unspooked Bobcat shot with a 50 cap lock muzzleloader at under 25 meters. Now, if you own the 50 cap lock muzzleloader, that can be a good competition to enter. If you don't own it, obviously not one you want to bother with right now. Now, Blacktail we can see has a 4 in parentheses, so this is going to be one with the different tiers. And the Blacktail comp requires harvesting the highest scoring Blacktail buck from under 25 meters. A pretty simplistic competition that you can do with your starter equipment. Just keep in mind, if you are doing competitions specifically to earn EM, you can't earn EM from the starter tier comps. You gotta get into that intermediate tier before it starts giving out EM as prizes. Now, I do think participating in starter comps is good. It gives you a chance to kind of learn how competitions work, understand all that stuff. It just doesn't have the EM reward. Now, this can be a really good thing to look for. I clicked on the doll sheet competition, and what we see here is that there's only 3 entries. Now, there's still over a day and a half left in this competition. There will be more entries being added. However, if you can find competitions that you can participate in that aren't going to require you to purchase more gear, for instance, you can very effectively hunt doll sheep with a 243, and when there's only a couple of entries, this can be a good one to look at and try to spend some time hunting for. Now, this particular one requires harvesting the lightest doll sheep. You see, first and second place are pretty similar weights. Those two are likely to be good scores. Third place is 86. You can definitely improve on that and get into the top 3. I don't always love to look for competitions that would be easy wins per se or easy top 3s, but if you're trying to earn EM, this is a good way to actually look for it. Competitions that maybe don't have a ton of entries, ones that are maybe being overlooked, especially during events. A lot of times everyone's doing the event stuff. You can look at competitions and maybe find a spot where less people are focused and get a chance to earn those EM and trophies. So with all that out of the way, let's see how we can do in a competition. And I have entered the axis deer competition, not because the doll sheep one was a bad one to enter, but because I've already got a doll sheep competition trophy. And one thing I've been working on doing is trying to get a competition trophy for every species in the game, and I don't have an axis deer one. So this is my main account. I'm saying that because if one of you out there is currently doing the axis deer comp and I were to end up placing in it with the beginner account that I don't intend to actually, use beyond this series, I felt like that would be kind of a lame thing to do. Earn EM and a trophy and then never use that account again. So we are on the main account, but I am equipped as a beginner. We have the 243, the starting scope, the 12 gauge single shot shotgun, and that is it. So no spotting scope, no anything to really have a lot of help in seeing axis deer at range, and we'll see how we do. And we've already got our first axis deer buck of the hunt, and he's not super impressive. There is a quite impressive one across there, actually. We may have to try and get that, but keep in mind, we are looking for a low score and a decent weight. Now, he's not walking our direction, so probably what we'll do is start kind of crawling over there and just have the 243 ready. When he goes broadside, which actually he's kind of doing, we'll try to get a shot. I say we're going to go for that, because I don't know that with a collar, or without a collar, we're going to do any better than that. So hopefully that gets into something good. Axis deer are pretty tough, and then because we want to get that big one, just going to keep an eye on where he goes. That might be a 200, which is really good for an axis deer. So we are going to make use of that ability to place a marker with our binoculars. What we're going to do is watch until he disappears. He's going to go out of render, and I think he just did. So we're going to try to get that center of our screen. Left click to place the marker, and we'll see on the map that ended up being 345 meters away, right around the distance animals will render out. So we'll go and look for the tracks in a minute, but let's first see if we got our smaller buck. And indeed we did. Something I actually haven't gotten to cover yet in beginner guides is the full cone, meaning you've got a dead animal there. So we're not on any tracks right now. We've picked up 0 tracks this hunt. When we click on this lung blood, that becomes our active trail, and we see those full domes as we head up here. But the full dome we could see from a distance was actually over our dead axis deer. There's a longer distance where a dome over a dead animal will show up than 4 tracks. So if you see that, that's something that can indicate you've got a downed animal there. So let's see. This guy was 83 kilo and 84 score. I forget even what was top 3. Well, that puts us in second. Maybe we'll get a competition trophy out of this. I didn't expect that to go so well so quick. And we have a big one to go and try to find. Now, I really didn't intend for this half of the video to be that much of a guide. I just wanted to kind of show how we hunt around. And then all this has started. So we're looking for a fleeing axis deer track in the area of where we placed our marker. And we've got one right here. It says 60 to 100 kilo. Now, if we were on a beginner account, we wouldn't get the weight estimate. However, this is the main account, so we do have some axis deer tracking skills. I am going to guess that's going to be the right track. And frankly, I would have guessed that whether or not we had a weight estimate. My axis deer tracking isn't that high, so it's really not helping us that much. But it does at least confirm, based on that weight estimate, that it would be a buck. So you can see, earning that tracking skill is good. It can be really useful, but as a lower level steer still here with tracking, all we know is that it was a decent weight buck. I don't know how we've ended up here. I do a lot of kind of crawling when I'm tracking stuff, and this guy just doubled back right to us. So we're gonna just crouch up, try to get the shot just behind the shoulder. That's gonna drop him. That ended up working really, really good, especially when we don't have camouflage for the area. And by the way, I don't know why there's a portal to nowhere opening up in the ground over there. I've never seen that before. I wonder if we get closer if that goes away, but when we don't have the camouflage for the map, I'll crawl around a lot more as I'm tracking because animals that are spooked are just more alert. And that ended up doing really, really well for us. So this guy, which we heart shot, was a 201.692 score. That might be our biggest axis deer ever. I can't remember how big our other 200 plus was. That is insane. We've killed 2 axis deer. One at the moment has us in second place, and the other is a giant. Now, one thing I do want to bring up, because this is a kind of beginner guide video, you'll see trophy shots like this around the community where maybe the player is holding an antler or, holding the gun a different way than you can in your trophy shots. There are purchasable trophy shot poses for both the animals and the characters, and that's what this is. If you're someone who, like me, really likes the aesthetics of the game and, trying to make really nice trophy shots, then that's something you could maybe consider buying earlier on. But in my opinion, when you're starting out, you can make pretty nice trophy shots without learning those poses, and there are probably far more important things to spend your earned currency on. We might be able to actually improve our competition entry here, because that buck is not very impressive. He still has to weigh over 80 kilo to count. But if we can get a shot in there with the 243, we'll definitely try to bring him down. Gonna crouch forward as we do this to stabilize the shot a little bit. Just as he picked up his head, get that shot behind the shoulder. I think it should hit a lung. See if we can see, he is dropping right there. So that track was 75 to 110. Pretty good odds that he actually ends up being over 80 kilo. Now, again, if we were on the beginner account with level 1 tracking skills, we wouldn't have known the weight of the track. But if we could find an axis deer track in general, it probably wouldn't be a terrible idea to follow it, and likely we would have. So did the weight estimate really help anything? I would say no in this case. But honestly, I do think the first one we shot would have scored higher than this. He's 95 kilo and an 84.8 score, right around the same. Must have been a little bit higher scoring because it didn't improve our entry at all. Or in the top left, it would have told us so. But a couple of pretty low scoring bucks that had good weights, and then obviously our one big one. And yet again, a similar kind of opportunity here with this Axis Deer. Decent weight, and a score up to 105. Now, I think, if anything, this one's going to score a little bit better than the other two kind of smaller ones, but we'll still probably try to take him if we can. So he is getting kind of broadside. Gonna get that shot in there. Should bring him down pretty quickly. I don't know why he's going to try to scale that cliff, but gonna fall right back down. And I think the one thing we have definitely seen here is even with the 243, the starter scope, the binoculars, and no collar, we can still fairly effectively hunt Axis Deer here on Bushrangers Run. And you can do that with really any species, of course, that the 243 is ethical for. Axis Deer may be a little bit better than some of the larger animals that you may have to, really try to get closer to and have a precise shot. But I wanted to do this kind of to show that you don't always have to have the best equipment to make it work. So this guy's 92 score still weighs high enough, but not going to be an improvement to our entry. So I did also want to mention, you could certainly buy the Axis Deer collar. I think it's 175 EM, that would be less than $2. We talked about earlier on in the video, you can only purchase EM in like 500, 1,000, 2,000, amounts. So you'd have to spend at least $5 to get it. But if it's something you're really interested in, it's not a bad idea, or you could purchase it with GM through doing missions and stuff like that. Or yet again, if you do enough competitions, earn those EM through the comps, you could get up to that 175 mark and buy it that way. So once again, we actually have a pretty good size Axis Deer up here. By the way, anytime that we're actually hunting for big ones, we do not have this kind of luck, but he'll probably be the last one that we shoot. And we're just going to try to follow him along until either he turns broadside or we can get some kind of better shot opportunity. But pretty cool, just in this hunt here, about an hour and a half, we've been able to find a good number of Axis Deer bucks without a collar and really without any way of spotting them in the distance, just hunting around, waiting for calls, and sometimes seeing them, 100 yards away or so. I want to get like a quartering angle out of this. He's about to walk over that hill, so probably we're going to call this as good as we're going to get just because he's walking away from us. So timing this shot up is going to be really key. We want that to go just behind the shoulder and punch into the lung. I don't know if it's actually going to end up as that, but again, dropped in about 5 seconds, I think we got it. Now, I don't think this one's as big as the last. He is 102 kilo though. Maybe he was decent sized. Score's taking a while to show up. Sometimes this happens where it gets stuck in a loop. 195 though. Really solid Axis Deer luck today. And I think as we've just hit our 100th Carbon 243 harvest, this hunt hopefully helped to show a couple of things. Number one, you can be pretty effective playing the Hunter Classic without spending any money. Everything we did today was with the stuff you start with in the game. Also, that 243 is a very capable gun. I did recommend in the beginner's guide trying to get as close as you can, making sure your shots are going to land in the lungs. You want to, especially when starting out, just go for safe shots. But it's a very good gun. It's got long range capability, it's powerful, it punched through the lung literally on every Axis Deer we shot today. And even the big one, we managed to shoot right through the heart. I really hope the explanation of how competitions worked and then a little bit of actually going out and participating in the competition can help you guys in selecting what comps you want to do if you do indeed want to do comps and sort of how to get into it. And I think on that note, that is going to do it for this video. So as always, thank you guys for watching. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer all those. And I'll see you next time.